Greetings, pilgrims. Welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage, and today I have an absolutely massive asset pack for you. As you know, the new year is on the horizon, and this means that the Global Game Jam is not too far away. So this is an event I look forward to every single year, and I want to make sure that we are ready to go. So I have created a huge pack of pickup items for you today. So use this in your projects, study these, use them for the Game Jam, whatever you want. Here we got a whole bunch of items, and I'm going to go over how they work here inside of Unity. It works very similarly inside of Unreal, just, import it, create the materials. Really, it's the same process. But then I'm also going to show you how I modeled every single one of these inside of Maya. Now, the modeling has been done inside of Maya, but you can translate this to any package that you use for modeling. Just, trade out the tools. When I say use the Connect tool, that might be called something different in your software, but just follow along. I'm sure you can get there. If you have trouble, let me know. But we got a lot of ground to cover, so let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to take a look at all of our items here. So starting with the stuff on the back row, we have here a couple of keys and key rings, and this was all made from modularizing our set. So we have one model that is a key, and then I have several keys here, but we've changed out the material, and as you can see, you can create all kinds of different keys. So say your game is something like, the original Doom, right? Had different key cards, but those key cards were just colored versions of the same thing. So one was red, one was blue, one was green, that kind of thing. So you can trade out the material for an item and get a lot more variety out of it. So we have one key ring, and then by using that key ring with a single key, or a double key, or as many keys as will fit on the key ring, and then you can trade out what kind of keys you have. So we're going to go over how to model this key ring. Is pretty simple, but how to model the key, and then here's all the different key combinations we have. All right, moving on. We got some resources. So very popular in board games, but it translates to video games as well. You have different resources here. So we've got some metal. So I have a metal box, a wood box, and a stone box. And then this would represent one resource amount of that. So we have an individual, and then we have a stack. And the stack could be programmatically equal to anything, but here it's 3. And then we have over here a gold bar and a stack of gold bars. So we'll go over again how to model all of these. Pretty simple, actually. And then we'll also go over here. We have a wooden barrel, and a kind of a iron barrel, more like a metal barrel, and it's got some drips and things on it, so you could use that for your games. Next up, I wanted to create a large variety of coins for you. So we have a couple different types of coins, and the material here is very simple, and we can change the color. So I can go here and say, let's make this anything we want. As you can see here, it's changing as we go across, so you can make it anything you want. So we have a couple different types of coins. This is a standard coin, which has no detail to it. It's just the ridge detail here. Then you have a coin which is more like the Mario type coins, very similar, but with just a single line in the middle. Then I have here some denomination in sizes. So we have a 1, a 5, and a 10. And this works similar to the way like US currency works, where the 1 is a certain size, and the next size up actually goes down in size a little bit. Actually, ours gets a little bigger, but assuming this is like a 1, a 10 piece, and a 25, So it's certain size, smaller, bigger size. And I just put the 1, 5, 10 on here. You can change out your textures for whatever you want and have different denominations there. Then we have some solid coins with some ridge detail to these. So you can change out this ridge detail as well. So you have 1, 5, and 10s there. And then this kind of almost, I want to say Asian looking coin, but it reminds me a lot of European currency, where you have the hole in the center, and then I put this square design, which marries nicely with the round design around the edge. So we have a 1, 5, and a 10 there as well. And all of these are using the same material. So if you go here and say, any coins that are silver, let's change this and make them red all of a sudden. Look at that. So we can change everything really, really quickly. All right, so that's good for those. Let's move along. We have 2 different stopwatches for you. So if you have a game where, say, it's a racing game or something like that, and you want to make sure that your player has to pick up different time, so you pick up more time to put time back on the clock. So you have 2 different options here. This one has like a glass front to it. You can change out whatever you want on there, or if you want to put a texture that has a number on there or something like that. And this is a more generic one, just representing some amount of time, but the amount is not present as far as a number. So I just put the little hands of the clock there for you. All right, then we have a heart. So our heart model is pretty cool, and we'll go over how to model that as well. And then we have 2 different stars for you. This is a more traditional, just very pointed tipped star, and this one has some more rounded edges to you. Okay. Then we have our gem. So this is modeled similar to the way a diamond would look, but then what I've done here is taken each one and it has a different material. So you can change out what kind of a gem it is based upon the color, based upon our material. So this would be like a ruby, and here's like a blue color one, and then we have a yellow and a green. So there you go. Then over here we have a hex bolt and a hex nut. So the hex nut, if I bring that up a little bit off the floor, there you go. And then the hex bolt. And these remind me kind of Ratchet and Clank, or some games where you have a mechanical theme. Then here's some collectible items, or it could be that whenever an enemy or a player gets hit, you could spawn these as little particle, kind of puff that comes off of them, and you could just have some nuts and bolts get knocked loose. All right, speaking of which, we have our little technology corner here. So we have a circuit board here. Let me go this way, actually, it's a little easier. So this is a circuit board I put together, and then I have the actual board itself and all the individual components here, so you could kind of make your own. So if I just make a duplicate of that, move that over here, you could say, okay, let's put a CPU over here, and I gotta move them up just a little bit because they're sunken into each other. There we go. Put a CPU over there, let's grab some RAM, put some RAM over here. I'll do multiple bits of RAM, there you go. And then these transistors, let's put a couple of those. There you go. Oh, I put too many, there you go. And then these are just little chips. I'm not quite sure what the names of these are. I'm not that techie, but here's a couple of them. And in my research here, they were usually laid out something more like that. And then here's a port board, so we could take this port board and move him over here and give him a 90-degree spin. There you go. And so there you go. Put him on the back edge, so where it would connect to other components. And there you go. Now encapsulate all of that into a game object by itself, or in Unreal into a blueprint by itself, and now you have your own custom circuit board based upon these components. Alright, now let's get to the ammunition. So lots of ammunition here for you. We'll start with the bullets, we'll come back to these. So we have 3 different kinds of bullets and then a shotgun shell. So the first bullet is a much more rounded top. This is kind of more cartoonish in a way. And then we have a more traditional cone-shaped bullet. We have like a rifle round, and then we have a shotgun shell. And for each of these, we have 2 types of triplets. So a triplet like this, we have a triplet like this in a line, and then we have this sort of floating triplet. And this would be really cool if you put this on a bobbing animation, something kind of like this. And then if you make it rotate, so that'd be really neat. So that's a couple of options there, and a couple of options for each one. Then over here we've got a couple of ammo boxes. So I made a box of 4, a box of 9, and a box of 16. So you have different variants there. So all in all, we have 70 items. And this is with different variants, each of these counting as 1, and then variants counting across here. And then even with these coins, you could make even more variants of this. If you swap out the textures here for 1, 5, you could make it a 25, a 50, whatever. But you have the size of the coins, and you have the shape already set up for you. So with all of these items, let's jump over to Maya and take a look at how we actually built all of these, okay? So open up Maya over here, and you can see here's my scene in Maya, and we have a ton of stuff going on here, all right? So let me kind of explain the process here. So as I built each one, I left behind for myself breadcrumbs to show you guys how I got there for most of them, because I wanted to show you the more complex or the more odd the shape, the less square or circle that's very simple to do. I wanted to leave behind some breadcrumbs and really show you how I made them. And then we'll talk about how we got everything unwrapped and how we got everything packed together. And you see here all the items are on top of each other. That's for the export. I'll talk about that too. So let's start at the beginning of the line and just kind of work our way down, okay? So for these first couple coins, it's actually pretty simple. It's just a cylinder. And then for each of these cylinders, what we do is we take the outer faces. So something like this. Let's go to our faces, select all of our faces. When I go to modeling, I'm going to say extrude. But instead of extruding outward, I'm just going to play with the offset. And if I do that, you can see how we get that inner ring. Something just like that. So you just want to bring in the faces just like that. Okay? All right, now I'm going to commit that and then back that out. There we go. All right, back to polygon mode. So each of these are just the same coin copied, and then what I've done is in the unwrapping, we've actually moved them to different spots because each of these has to be a unique model onto the unwrap sheet because we're going to apply a very specific normal map to it. And then for these, I just changed the size. So this one I made it a little bit smaller, this one I made it a little bit bigger. Perfect. Okay, so here is our diamond. So let's talk about how we made the diamond shape. So over here, so start with a cylinder, and I'll follow along side by side with this to show you how this works. So for my cylinder, it doesn't show up here anymore, but that's okay. We'll create just a new cylinder. Here we go. New cylinder is, where are you at? Way over here. Okay, new cylinder guy. We'll bring him into a particular size. Let's scale him down. We're going to make him really, really thin, something like this. Okay, but the trick is his subdivision sides. We need 6. There we go. 6 sides, just like this. Okay. Then what I'm going to do, if we move them over, you'll notice the next thing I did was take just those bottom vertices and I rotated them. So if I go here and grab the bottom verts, grab those, and I'm going to rotate just those. I think it's 30 degrees right there in the middle. Nope. Right there in the middle. And that looks weird at first. It looks like I've kind of broken my model. But if you look at it carefully, this is kind of what we need. So now we start connecting these up and moving the other verts down. So if I take this, and let's take that bottom vert and move them down. You see here we're starting to get the shape. Okay. Now I'm going to grab all of these verts that we twisted. I'm going to go to the top and I'm going to scale them out a bit. Scale them out like so. Okay, now you can kind of see it come into play, right? So now we need to do that connecting up I talked about. So let's go ahead and connect these up. So in my modeling, I'm going to say connect, and that just creates a line, creates an edge between those. All right, so whatever it's called in your software, that's what we do. We just go around and we're just filling in this hole. Because this is a faceted surface, the way that diamonds are cut, gemstones, all gemstones really, because it's a faceted surface, we want to purposely create some triangles here. Now, a lot of people will go back and forth with you and say, you shouldn't have triangles in modeling. That's not true. Every single model will get triangulated when it comes into a game engine, period. That's just, programming fact. So, but what we're doing here is we're controlling the flow to make sure that it's doing it in the way we want. Okay, and then at the very end here, see, move these verts down, scale them out, and then when we're all done here, what we did was just make sure that we selected all of our faces. So let's go to all of our faces and give them a hard face. There you go. That way they will capture the light and they will look nice when they rotate and all as well. There you go, see? Perfect. Okay, so that's how we create a diamond. Pretty simple. These guys are actually really easy. These guys were just a box, and then I took one edge and extruded off of that edge. So for example, we grab this edge, bring up my extrude tool, and bring out that face. Really pretty simple. The one trick to this is you need to make sure that you flip the face. So in Maya, it will show you that the back side of a face is black like this, and then my gray will be, the face that's going to get textures. So what I did here was I just selected these and did a flip on that to make sure that, okay, now I have texture here. And the way that works is, we can see, let me back that out, is over here. So for this guy who has his flap open, so on the back, he's black there. Now, you could fix that by giving it a two-sided texture, and that would work out just as well. Okay, let's talk about modeling some bullets. All right, so over here, we start with a cylinder. Pretty simple, and what I'm going to do is extrude out a bottom piece. So I'm going to select these bottom faces, something like this. Make sure I'm not selecting that. There you go. So selecting these, and then do that extrude tool, and just pull down a little bit. And this is going to create that bottom lip. Okay, so if we go here, you see that's what we did there, pulled down that bottom lip. And then here I'm going to extrude that bottom lip out. So I'm going to select all those edges and extrude out. So let's do that. So if I go here and face, select all the way around. Oh, it's not going to do it for me. Let's do it this way. There we go. Select all of those. Unselect the ones I don't want. There you go. So just those. We don't want the very bottom. We just want this ridge. And then say extrude. And now we can use some thickness. So I'm going to bring it out a little bit like so. And then if you want just that bottom little curve, what you're going to have to do here is also add a little bit of offset. So offset down just a little bit. So it's sort of doing like a C or a U shape like that from the side. Okay, there you go. So again, I'll undo that because I want to keep our example here because I'm going to provide you guys with this whole file so you can see everything, okay? Then what we need to do is we need to make a sphere that has the same number of sides around as our cylinder. And I'm going to cut off the bottom and just delete it. And then I'm going to cut off the top of our shell casing so far. Because we're going to weld the two together, we can't have those interior faces. So once we've done that, then I'm going to take our sphere here. And what's really neat is if I bring this guy over, I'll show you here. I duplicate this, and what I'm going to do is make sure I move my pivot so that it's exactly in line with this bottom vert. So if I move this up for a second, now I'm going to hold V to snap to vertices, snap right there, drop it, and then scale, and just scale up. And this determines the pitch of your shell. So for the first one, I made it very rounded, and then I made them taller for the rifle, and about in the middle-ish like this for a regular bullet. There you go. So then once those are complete, we're going to put the two together, and that's what you get here. So we get one with the rounded, and then same thing, this guy just copied and moved over with the higher pitched one. There you go. Then I use the same bottom, and then I moved down those edges, these edges here. I move them down to here, then fill in that hole and extrude up, and that gives us our shotgun. See, there's not a history for that because he was so simple. Now for the rifle guy here, I forgot to do a history for him, but he works very similarly. And what we're going to do is basically, I started with the shotgun shell. So this is made off of a shotgun shell, but you can see how I have one row of edges here and one row of edges here. So then I move the one row to here, move the other row a little bit higher than it, and then I scale them in. Then you extrude up a little bit to here, and then this line is the actual edge where the shell casing ends and the pitch begins. So from this line up is just another one of these guys scaled to meet the right edges. And you can see in the shading there, you can see the difference as it changes. So essentially each of these is made from the previous. Now we can make all kinds of different shells. And these are not accurate to the way that they actually are measured. These are just a quick asset for game dev, okay? This guy was an unused piece, so we'll ignore him. Okay, so to create the hex nut here, very simple. So again, a cylinder with 6 sides. Then we're going to select those middle 2 vertices, and we're going to extrude outward, we're going to bevel them outward. We're going to delete the hole and then fill the gap. So let me show you how this works. So we'll just follow along again. So let's duplicate, move this over, and move them down. Now, vertex, bevel, I want to say it was 0.5. Let's do 0.5. There you go. Okay, sounds good. Then, let's move them down. So we're going to delete the interior. So go to my faces, delete the interior. And then let's weld these up. So these two, let's make sure I select the right two. Those two, and we're going to bridge. So that's what this command is called, is bridge. So it might be called something different in your software, but I think bridge is pretty common if I remember. So let's bridge all these together. So now we're creating like a donut, okay? And there are some tools to do this as well, to sort of create that donut shape right away. But a lot of the tools in here are meant for more rounded things, so I wanted a very specific hard edge. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a copy of this guy. Well, let's just move him down rather. Okay, so now what we need to do is take our edges, and we're going to bevel the edges to make a circular hole in the middle of this very harsh edged thing. Okay, so let's go over here, and we're going to take our edges, and I'm going to select our edges. I'm going to select these interior edges. What I can do is select one, hold shift, and double click, and it will select all of them around. Very good. And now if I bevel, I'm going to leave it at 0.5. That's perfect. I have a nice rounded hole in the middle of this. So we're looking pretty good there. So let's move along. So what do we do here? Well, now we need to bevel the other edges. But you notice First, I need to get these points all the way to the end. So let's go to our points and target weld some of our points up. So we're going to target weld, and this is welding one vertex to another. So I'm combining these two vertices, but I'm telling it, take this one vertex, move it to this guy, and then merge the two together. So that way we can control the shape. That's what it's all about. All right, now I'm going to select our edges. So a click and a double click, and then another bevel. There you go. So that's that. Then a couple more things. In order to facilitate our unwrapping, we move this down. You notice that we cut some edge loops into here. So if I take this guy and do a double click around this edge and do a single connect, so I'm going to do one cut around there, and then on the inside do the same thing, do a connect in there. So now we have the two edges there. And then this final one here is just a matter of getting all the smoothing right. So you can see between this and this, there's no physical change. It's just getting all the smoothing correct. So for this, what I did was let's select everything and make it a hard edged. And then if you go in here and select these edges and these edges in a ring and make those smooth. There you go. Oh, one more, sorry. On the inside as well, because it is a smooth interior. There you go. And you have a nice little hex nut. Very good. Now, to create the hex bolt, very similar process, and what I did here was I took a hex nut and I just sort of re-engineered it. So let's take this guy here, and I'm going to duplicate and move him over, and I'll try to remember and show you kind of how I got to this. It's actually pretty simple, but first I'm going to select a whole bunch of stuff. So all of that. Okay, so I'm selecting all of that interior. Then I'm going to go up to my selection, and I'm going to say convert selection to faces. So I've now selected the faces that were involved with those edges. And I'm going to delete them. Boop, they're gone. Now, if I double click and select this whole edge, I can do a fill. So that's under mesh, fill hole. There you go. Now this top part, he needs to be up and out a bit more. So what we're going to do is first scale outward. So let's get the outer edge we're looking for, and then let's bring them up a little bit. There you go. So then just like that. So you can see how those guys are working like that. Now, obviously we have a nasty end-gun in the middle here. That cannot stand, so let's select that. And we're going to do an extrude, and again, we're going to do offset and just bring it in close to the center. This is an old trick I've used for years. Bring it in close to the center, do a select, convert selection to vertices, and then I'm going to merge them and say some huge number, so 2. There we go. Now it's just a matter of doing the correct shading for this. So what we need is everything on the top needs to have its own shading, and then this needs to have its own shading as well. So let's select everything. Give it all hard shading to begin with. I think that'll actually do it for this, yeah. And then from the bottom, we're just going to extrude down to create this kind of capped hole, which is very simple. And actually, it's a little bit smaller than it should be. So let's select all of this, scale it in just a little bit. It's more like that. And then extrude downward. A little bit more. There you go. And you do have to scale it back a little bit because it tends to taper a little bit. So what I did was actually brought everything down and then did a vertex alignment to the top. So you can do that as well. And then mesh, fill hole. There you go. And the same trick down here. So select that face. We're going to extrude, offset it inwards. There you go. And then we're going to select, convert selection to vertices, and then do this and say 2. There you go. So we've recreated that. Perfect. Okay. Next up is the star, and the star is pretty simple. So we make a cylinder, and we need to pick a very particular set of edges. We need to make sure that this has, let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 sides, okay? So I'm going to take this guy and duplicate him, move him over here, and you'll see this is like movie magic. I'm going to select these 2 edges and then every other set after that. So I'm going to do not the top, but the left and right, and then skip one, select, skip one, select, and you'll end up with this. You need to make sure that we've selected all of them. Yep, see, oh, sometimes you can miss like that in perspective mode. So you should do this from your top view. So we selected all of them. And now if I scale on those two axes and bring them in, look at that. You make a star. Really quick and easy. And then all this is a matter of scaling it down in size. I add an edge. And then I take each of those edges. Here, I'll show you this part. Take each of those edges. Let's duplicate this, move it over, move them down. So what I'm going to do is select these edges and select these edges, scale from the top, bring it in a bit. There you go. That adds just a little bit of depth around it, and it just makes it look much nicer. Now, for this one, I actually did some beveling to make it a bit smoother. So this guy, we'll take this, duplicate, move him over, and I beveled the same edges that are still selected. So let's go ahead and do a bevel on that. There you go. 0.5, and that will just make it all the way to the edge. So now it's a nice smooth transition from here to here, and then a harsh transition there. And what I did for the smoothing for this guy is make everything smooth, then go to my edges and just select that outer edge and make that outer edge hard. And now you get that nice little edge down the center. If you don't want that, then you can just make that completely smooth if you want. But there are 3 versions in this file here for you. So we've got this version, this is the smooth version, and then this is a version where I took the edges and just beveled those and then solved the middle for you. So there you go, that's a bonus one for you. Okay, on to the keys. Let's figure out how we model some keys. So to model some keys, we're going to start with a cylinder. Oh no, sorry, not a cylinder, wow. Okay, this one we're actually going to use our little torus shape. So if I bring the torus over here, you'll take a look at what it looks like to begin with. Here we go, torus. And then you have to change a lot of its settings. So for example, you can play with some of these, but the radius, so I did like a 0.5 on the radius. This number you got to make much smaller to make that inner ring. So this is your section radius, so it's this distance around, right? So 0.05, something like that, very small. Like that. So you mess around with that, and then the sides that you want, and you get this. Then from here, what I'm doing is I'm making a cylinder and just kind of putting it into place. You see, he's nothing more than just placed in there. So what I did was I took the cylinder and moved its pivot right to this point, and then I'm using vertex snapping to say, move this until you're in line with this vertex. Very important, this top vertex that runs along here, right there, okay? Then we're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to get a couple more. So 2 more, and this guy is going to line up along this edge, and this guy is going to line up along that edge right there. And then I took those points and moved them all the way to the end to line up with this line here. Okay, so now we're going to start cutting the shapes out. So this is where the important part comes in. We're going to do the same thing multiple times to kind of solve this. So we'll do it once here to show you. So we want to put this and this together, so we need to create some cuts. So what I've done here is I've put a couple of cuts in, and what I've made them is each of these cuts is in line with one of these edges. So we have one here, one right on the edge where this is, one here and one here. And then what you do with that is you do a connection from the very top to here, from here to the middle, from the middle down to here, and from the middle there down to here. And as you can see, we're cutting out our shape this way, but this is just what it looks like from above. So let's do an example, okay? So I'm gonna move the key ring out of the way, and I'm gonna take this and this, and we're going to pretend like this is our cutting that we're gonna cut into the shape, okay? So let's move this guy out of the way for now, and I'm gonna create some edges. So I'm gonna cut across here. So let's do a cut. There we go. And I need 5 in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See that? So over here, let's do 2 more over here. Connect. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So now I'm going to select these, and I'm going to say move, but snap to your vertice of this guy. Move, snap to the vertex of this guy. Snap to him. Snap to him, snap to him. Okay, now going to our vertex, we're going to start at the top and we're going to work our way across. So I need to go from here this way, so I go to the first available right there, connect. Cool. Now from here I need to go this way some more. First available is that guy, connect. Cool. So let's go this way. Connect. Connect. Now along the bottom we're doing the reverse. So technically this is our bottom, so we can go this way to the first available, which is that guy. So we're walking this direction and curving and saying, I'm going to reach this vert before I will reach that vert. So then from here, I would line up with that one. And you see how they connect. And you know you're doing it right if they line up, because they need to. It's a complete circle. So there we go. Connect, connect, connect. And there you have it. So now, let's take these faces and get rid of them. Can't have these faces because we're going to put our cylinder in that place. There you go. And our cylinder, let's get rid of these faces because he's going to connect inward. Let me just make sure I didn't delete the half. There we go. Now we need to do some cleanup. And the cleanup is very simple. You can do it a couple ways. One way is to select all these and do a control delete. That will delete the edge and all of the vertices that are not manifold, that are not needed. So I can just delete all those in the same way like that. If you don't want to do it that way, you can also do it with the target weld. So what we're going to do is go to vertex, and then I'm going to target weld this guy inward. And I'm just going to collapse everything inward. Alright, there you go. So now we still have all quads, we still have everything is working nicely, everybody's connected together. Now we need to connect this guy back in place, right? He still has the same pivot, and this vertex still exists. So let's snap him back in place. Snap him back in place, there we go. So now with him in place, I'm going to take the vertices and move them back. And now we can target weld up the vertices. Well, we can't target weld yet because they're two separate objects, but we're going to move them. So I'm going to move this guy into place, and just moving them straight across to the vertex that they line up with. So there's no mystery here. So if they don't move straight across and hit a vert, then you've done something wrong. And so then it's easy to kind of troubleshoot. You can look at it and go, okay, well, I should have a vertice. Each one should have a friend. If they don't have a buddy, then there's a problem. There you go. Now the two meet seamlessly. We still have all quads all around. Everything's working nicely, and we can move this out. You can see what he looks like there. And it makes sense because this is a rounded shape. So this guy has to meet him in a rounded fashion. But then also this way, this guy needs a cutout for this guy to marry into. So the two should work seamlessly. There you go. And using that same technique, you can create as many points to the key as you want. I just created one or two. And then the same thing here. Put those guys together, same thing here. Put those guys together. You can see how I haven't cut them at that point. But I did the same thing, and then I just rounded off the cap here to make sure that everybody was together. So this is done the same way. And then I just rounded off the cap here to make sure that it was a nice smooth transition. There you go. Okay, so moving along, the key ring is just the same kind of a torus. And then all I did for this guy was make sure that there was a center seam here and here for unwrapping. Pretty simple. Our resource boxes are just a box. That's literally all it is, and then I move the pivot to the bottom. Okay, so to create our stopwatch, this guy was a little trickier, but not really hard. So you need two shapes to start with, a sphere and a cylinder, and you need to make sure they have the same number of edges around this way. We're going to take our sphere and delete half. We're going to take our cylinder and delete the back half. We're going to take our sphere and we're going to squish it down. We're going to scale it down. And then I think eventually what I did was I removed some edges to make it a little bit more, palatable. And then on our cylinder, we're going to bevel this edge. Over here, once we have that beveled edge, we're now going to insert a little bit of a hole here. So that was done with the same kind of behavior. Let's see if I can do this. Nope. We can have a really nice selection. I can say angle and just say select everything that is on the same angle. Oh, wow. That didn't work out. Let's see. Either way. So we're going to select all of these faces and we're going to do an inset. So it's going to be like this. We're going to inset and then extrude inward. There you go. And combine these two together. Weld up our vertices. And then here, let's see, what's the change from here to here? I think this is where I started removing the edges. Yeah, and then we're adding some extra pieces. So the top part is 2 cylinders put together. And then again, we're going to bevel those edges just to kind of create a little bit of a nice turnover there. And then here we started working with the little side piece. The side piece is another cylinder with the top and bottom cut off. And I put him on this nice little edge in the center. That's what we did here. So from here to here, you'll notice there's no edge here. And then here we put an edge right down the middle. And that's to align these things right in the center. So that edge exists here. And then this guy we can snap right to that vertex and then angle him a bit. And then here I'm going to extrude upward from that. So we're going to extrude out and up, cap it off, and then he's in place. And at the very end, we don't actually need that edge. It's just there for our modeling purposes to make sure that we can see it. So then we remove it at the very end. And there you go. And these two are identical. I just wanted to show you that over here, I took off the face and made another cylinder where I squished it down and removed some edges. And that becomes, there is a glass on front of it. So this is the one that became kind of the flat face. You can put anything you want on there. And this is the one with just the actual time modeled in. Okay. Now for our heart. Heart was a little trickier. So what I did was I found a picture of a heart, and then you start to kind of create the shape here. So what I did was start with a square, cut some edges in and move these points around. But what you really want to focus on is these faces here. Just get that outside edge going. Just make sure that you have center each of the tips, and work your way around that. And in the middle, you just kind of fill in. And then from there, I raised everything up. And then here, I did a smooth to make sure I have a much smoother surface. And then here, the neat trick here to get from one half to another is I'm going to make a duplicate, move it over, and then scale. And then on the axis you want. So I need on the z-axis there, so I'm going to do a -1 on the z-axis, and that creates a mirrored copy for me. And do this before you unwrap anything, okay? So then when you unwrap, it's all solid. And then combine those two, and then make another copy, and then do on the, let's see, that's the y-axis -1, and combine those two. And now you have a heart. Very simple. This was our gold brick. It looks huge here because I brought in a cube here that I took from measurements online to make sure that it is exactly the shape and size of a real gold brick. So I took those and then scaled them in, and then once they were done, scaled them down to fit within our 1 meter cube. Same thing with the heart and everything else to make sure that everything was stacking properly. And for our resource cubes, nothing really fancy here, but we have a cube and then stretched out, and then put the pivot on the bottom, and then to make our stack. So once we've unwrapped this guy, this is made from those pieces, so then the texture kind of repeats on all of these. So we have all of our resource cubes. And then there are multiple copies because each one is painted differently, so that's why you're going to have multiple copies in order to put into the texture sheets. Alright, then we have our resource cubes here, so our wood, stone, wood and metal, and then stone I gave a little bit more of a rounded edge, and that's just taking actually all of the edges here, and then if you do a modeling bevel, and then just bring that back a little bit, something more like that. And I think I gave it 2 segments, yeah. So that's a nice way to give just a little bit of a beveled edge to that. Okay, let's undo that. There we go. Our one barrel is very simple. It's just a cylinder. So another barrel is a cylinder. We take this inside edge and we're going to scale it out. And then here I'm going to add 2 more edges and scale them out as well. And what we're looking for is this kind of rounded shape along the edge here. And then here we're going to take those edges and create a bevel from those. So from here we're going to take this and say like this. We're going to bevel that, and if I come back on my amount, something like that. Okay. And then take these and these. And if we do a convert selection to faces, and then extrude and the thickness, and there you go. You get the little these are the metal bands that hold it together. Okay, so let's undo all of that because I don't want to save that. There you go. And then from here, the top here, we're just going to inset and extrude down, pardon me. And then here, same thing for the top and bottom. And I added this edge here just to kind of give a little bit of a transition so that we have wood coming up, and then you can have the top be a different type of wood. And then one of the examples I saw, people were able to, you could go in here and say, potentially take this and say delete and make like, a little bit of some variation here, because you don't want every single one to be like this, but if you wanted once in a while to be like this, you could do this. So by bridging these edges across here, I've now made kind of a chip in the barrel. See, something like that. So I left the edges there as a possibility for you. Okay. Almost done. Over here for our circuit board, you can see this was my example circuit board, and here are all the pieces. And these are very simple, just squares and cylinders, just all put together and sized out the right size, and then put together. And these are individual so that you can move around and create your own pieces. All right. So one last note I want to talk about is the unwrapping and how all of the unwrapping works for this. So you can see I have a couple copies of my various unwrapping, and I want to show you the results of these. So I bring up the UVs. This is what everything looked like right out of the gate with no UV work done to it at all. So that's obviously not good. So I go over to this, and this is the automatic mapping that Maya was able to do for me, which is decent. You could definitely paint this in a crunch. This would work, but you don't really want to go with this method. If I come over here, take a look at these guys. This is what we ended up with before I separated to make the variants. So this is a lot better. And I want to talk about, I got a lot of questions about this, and I want to explain why that is there. But this is my final unwrap that was from inside of UV Layout, and I just put everything together and made sure that I had one of each type of thing, and then here's all the different coin variants and that sort of thing. So the reason these are offset is because when the texture repeats, so this texture is gonna tile. It's gonna just keep going on your texture sheet here. And so whenever you put things on the sheet, it's gonna put the paint down basically where it exists on the UV sheet. But for normal maps especially, and this might affect other maps too, I'm not really familiar with how it affects other types of maps, but I know for normal maps, if I have two shells on top of each other, so for example, if I go here and say shell, and if I move this guy back to where he originally was, so both halves of the keyring are now on top of each other on the texture sheet, what's going to happen is with the normal map, one side will look great, and the other side will look terrible. It'll almost look like it's inverted because it's having trouble figuring out, how do I apply a normal map to the same spot, but then this shell should actually be reversed in its direction. So to fix that, what we do is, because the texture will tile, so this whole square will repeat here and here and here and so on, I just move each shell over. So now when it goes to paint this shell, it's going to look at this texture and not say, I'm applying the same one I've already applied, I'm applying it again. Oh, it's okay, he's been offset. So anything that has the exact same setup, so if you have, say, 100 models and they all have the exact same texture and the exact same normal map, but they're all on the sheet for some reason, well, then what you can do is you can stack them all together, but then you have to offset them by exactly one instance of a UV shell. It could be one shell like this, or I could put this at 2 or 3 or 5 or 6, whatever. And as long as I know that it's a multiple of one shell, so any of those will work, then I know that it'll be painted properly. So that's why it looks a little, people say, oh, you're missing your UV shells. No, everything's fine. It's all lined up to repeat properly. So I wanted to take a moment to explain that because there was some confusion. Okay, and lastly, what we've done here is now that everything's been modeled, everything's all set, everything's unwrapped, we take it into Substance Painter and we painted everything, brought everything back here, and you can see how everything's just on top of each other. Because when we export this, we want to make sure that everything is at the 0, 0, 0, because then it will have its proper pivot. And then if I jump back over to Unity here, and you can see here if I go to my assets, let's see, where is it, game assets, this is how it kind of came in. You can see how it's all one huge chunk. But if I expand this, you see here's all of my models, all of my pieces all together. And then all I did here was bring that into the world, bring it in and break it out of that shell, and then move them all around. You can see here I made, when we made our own circuit board here, so these are all named 1, 2, 3 because we make copies of it, but that notwithstanding, every single one of these is just broken out of that pack that comes in. So then for our materials, let's go over that real fast. So almost everything is using this Game Asset Pack 1 material, because this is the texture, it's everything, it's, all of the paint that we did. You'll notice that the things that are white on the texture sheet are the things that we were going to provide multiple colors inside of Unity or inside of Unreal. Either way would work. So for example, the copper coins, so anything that is a copper coin, I can change that here because they have a white texture on them in the normal texture sheet, and then all we're really using is the normal map. So that's very easily changed. Gold coins, silver coins, and all of the gems, and then the key ring over here, the key is just a color as well. So we can change that. So I can change that to whatever I want. See, there you go. Everything that was supposed to be an iron key is now affecting that. And that's a really quick way to iterate. So if you have something like, you want to have a gold, and then a silver, and then a copper for coins, very quick way to iterate. If you want to have, like we talked about earlier with the Doom example, you have a key card. Say you made something like our circuit board over here, but say this central CPU had a glowing light. Well, we make that light white in our textures and we bring it into Unity or Unreal, we could affect the color in here, because in here we can change whatever we want. So then also for prototyping, that means that if you change your mind and say, oh, we're no longer going to have a red color, that's going to mean that it's broken or that's an enemy circuit board or something. Okay, well now we can have blue, green, like a light blue, maybe an orange color, some other colors, and we can change that on the fly inside the editor here. So I hope you guys have enjoyed. I'm sorry for the delay, a little bit of difficulties, but we got everything in here, 70 assets for you. So I'm going to put all of this together in a nice big zip file. It'll have the textures, it'll have the Maya file, it'll have the raw FBX file you can bring in and just kind of export everything out. And I wanted to show you the process of how we went about creating it, how, this is a huge pack of assets for your games. Please use this for your games, use this for the jam, use this for any kind of game challenge you do. If you want to just have a quick pickup item, if you say, oh, we're going to have to pick up gems, or we're going to pick up, resource blocks, here you go. Here's some stuff you can just throw in there and use. If you have any questions, any problems at all, let me know. And I appreciate everybody's kind attention. It's been a fantastic year. We're going to move into the next year and get ready for the jam coming up. I'm very excited for it. So thank you so much, and thank you for all the subscribers. It's been just an amazing journey, and it's just the beginning. So, as always, guys, keep practicing, get better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.